So I said at the start of this podcast that it's really important that we need to look at cross elections worldwide and small elections as well, because they really do tell a wider geopolitical story. So on that note, why should anyone care about the Slovenian election?
Yeah, the Slovenian election was looking until about 10 days before the election to be a typical case of the current government, the incumbent, losing to its traditional centre-right rival over dissatisfaction over public policy. Until come 2 weeks to the election, and all of a sudden, the centre-left party led by current Prime Minister Golob accuses the Israeli firm Black Cube to have come to Ljubljana to have meetings with the leader of the right-wing Slovenian Democratic Party, former Prime Minister Janša. And what seemed like a clear victory for the right-wing bloc in Janša turned in the end to pretty much an electoral tie between the two, both in terms of party and coalition, and perhaps a position in which Golob, who's going to be one of the most strongest defenders of Palestine in the European political sphere, to being able to construct a government for the next 4 years. And so this raises the question of, is there Israeli interference in European elections?
I mean, this is absolutely shocking. And
I'm shocked it's not being talked about.
It is ridiculous it's not being talked about. But we have to stress it's a private intelligence firm.
Yes.
It's only allegations, not known to be linked to state. We can't prove that the meeting actually took place. It's just the room was booked. So that's according to Reuters. Yeah. But it's sus as hell, right?
The public has believed it,
But look, we put it in this context. You've got one of the most pro-Palestine supporters in Europe. He's blocked goods from the Israeli settlements from being imported. They recognise a pro-Palestinian state. They've been outspoken against Netanyahu. I mean, other than Ireland and Spain, this is the most pro-Palestine country in Europe. But then it's just like, right. So the private intelligence firm with former IDF links,
someone who has allied themselves strongly with Orban in the past, these kind of people that have cozied up to Israel before.
And they've just, booked a meeting room, in the capital with this guy that may not gone ahead. Yeah, that's a bit sus, I'd say. And the guy that was, going to win the race 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks before the election took place.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's not true, then they played a corker, because it was known that Janša was very pro-Israel. Right. And it was known that Golob was very pro-Palestine. The voters knew this. It's not per se a vote against Israel. It is a vote against foreign interference in the elections.
I think that's the key thing, yeah.
And the right wanting to interfere. It's not that people have changed their mind.
It just shows you how... And maybe this is a thing that you get from a new country. I mean, Slovenia only got independence, I believe, someone can correct me, it'll be the 1990s. I don't know exactly when they split from Yugoslavia.
Yeah. After a weeks-long war in 90s.
So this is a real hard-earned democracy, hard-earned independence. So for them, obviously, foreign interference is going to be a massive thing. Yeah. But it's very weird that it's not your traditional sources, right?
No.
It's not your Russia.
Yeah.
It's Israel now. So I think...
Yeah, it's and that's the thing. Will we see in Spain? Spain's coming up next year. Mm-hmm. Perhaps it's different that we haven't seen the Spanish centre-right traditional party as much really cozying up to the more radical right-wing elements of Europe. So there was perhaps a more easy person who would have been looking for Israeli support here. But there's Vox, who's very popular in Spain. I mean, will these kind of private intelligence firms, we have to say it's not concrete evidence, but will they be looking to Vox? Will we be seeing a network being involved, much like Russia was, with many parties?
Like, when you say it's not concrete evidence, like even when we get, Russia, they say, Russia interfered in the 2019 election in the UK. It's never something that can be quite proven. And it was quite likely. Exactly. It's something, it goes through private companies. Even let's say it's not the state interfering. Let's just say it's a private company. They're all the way that these money and these meetings work. The public will never know.
Yeah.
That's just how foreign interference in the elections work. But it shows you how big of a deal it is going forward, especially now when we've got increasing risks to cybersecurity online. Even do you remember in Romania last year they had the guy who was sponsored by Russia. And they were like essentially giving him a bunch of Russian bots and TikTok campaigns to run the election, and Romania had to cancel the election because Russia were interfering. This guy came out of nowhere,
and almost. Some people call for public funding for parties to come back, but that's not enough. You can have social media bot campaigns that are true interference led by other states. Yeah. So if this is to become something with AI even more potent in the future, how do we deal with this? There needs to be a really serious discussion as geopolitics becomes more and more intertwined in our politics, which is undoubtable given Iran, Trump, and Israel now, as we are heading towards a potential global conflict. Sorry to say it, but it is.
Yeah.
What is the space that we have to have for defeating electoral interference? We are seeing in the UK some people getting some pretty suspicious donations from British nationals.
Well, the government has stepped in recently. They've banned crypto donations to parties because they had that Thai businessman donate some crazy amount to Reform.
Exactly.
Obviously, then they had ban on how much a foreign national can donate. But there are still ways around this.
Exactly.
There just needs to be some real hard thinking. And I sympathise as well for the countries that don't have the technological sophistication and the history of democracy. Like in Western Europe, they probably do have the more apparatus to deal with this.
Yeah.
They have EU support. If we start thinking wider, I mean, goodness knows what's happening in Latin America. If they start interfering there, it's not a slate to them. It's just saying that, like, if they get targeted by Russia, China, where does this come in? And I think, voters need to be wide awake, because if voters do find out about foreign interference, they're clearly very eager to reject it.
Yeah.
But it shows, I mean, they're only going to get better at it.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at Hungary. What could come in the election there that's in on the start of April? That is going to be one in which foreign interests are being incredibly high. And we don't have state institutions there that are independent and able to control them. So it looks like polls seem to be suggesting an Orban defeat, but who knows what kind of things can come in last minute that really push the support away from that. So it's a serious debate that has to be had in today's politics. And the UK being a state that has recognised Palestine with opposition on the other side, we have to be ready for that as well.
But I wonder in Hungary, like, at least in Slovenia, they had the advantage that the guy who accused the others of Israeli interference was the prime minister.
Yeah.
He had the state's powers at hand and the ability to investigate
Very good point.
In Hungary, it's the reverse is true. Orban's the prime minister, and he completely controls that place.
Yeah.
Putin comes in and gives him a bit of, hush money.
EV is controlled by Orban.
Telecoms is controlled.
Exactly.
He does what he wants.
I mean, the judiciary probably wouldn't be particularly relevant here, but that's obviously also controlled by him as well for any kind of cases of corruption that would maybe occur. So yeah, it's true.
You guarantee when the election observers come back, they're going to say, oh, yeah, that was definitely corruption. But it's just like, what are they going to do about it?
Yeah. So anyway, so it looks like, to recap, but again, it was very similar to Denmark. Neither bloc, there's two fairly clear blocs, neither bloc secured a majority because there is a kind of party that was
we should say. It was so Golob, the centre left, has ended on 29 seats. Janša, despite this claim, I mean, he was going to end up with way more, has ended up with 28 seats. So there's one seat in it.
Exactly.
So it really depends on the smaller parties.
So as we said, there's one party that's not really part of either bloc. So I find it unlikely either would go with that party. They've said they're more likely to
what's
go
wrong with this other party? Yeah.
This historical kind of anti-vax party, tie allegations of links to Russia and this kind of thing. Very populist. Kind of people that you wouldn't really want to trust, essentially, as a moderate to have in the coalition with you. So the strength, though, that comes from Golob is that on both sides we have kind of three parties in the blocks. Golob is the most centrist of the three on the left. Janša is the most right-wing on the right. So
he's got that centrist advantage then.
So he's got the centrist advantage of maybe, I mean, the centre-right parties would not maybe want to work with the most left-wing partner, but perhaps Golob can ally with two of them, and then maybe choose to bring his kind of social democrats along with him. But Janša, the most moderate part he can reach to the left is Golob himself, who has a bigger party than him. Janša's only option is to try and convince this other party or hope for new elections. So it really rests with Golob, and can he build a coalition around him? But the most important foreign implication is, of course, that you would still have a very pro-Palestine leader there, and I guess also Janša is someone who has been, prone to blocking some EU measures and signing with Orban. So if you don't have Orban, you don't have Janša.
And I thought Slovenia was becoming increasingly EU in its sentiment recently.
Yeah,
that was the way that the former Yugoslav countries were going, generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, there's of course always populists ready to launch, tax on tirades on the EU and everything. But it is a very pro-EU country. And when we see that, I mean, the other parties in the right-wing coalition are very much pro-EU. So it's just a small element of Janša, but electoral politics, what we always say, whoever leads is going to be the preeminent figure. So that Eurocritical voice is going to be the one in the EU Council that can make the decisions to block initiatives on foreign policy and other things.
Right, so before we move on to Western Europe, do you consider it Western Europe?
I think you have to.
I guess
correct.
Economically speaking, I see it as
But
West,
yeah.
but I know culturally
Yeah.
it feels different. Anyway, getting sidetracked. Before we move on to Western Europe or Southern Europe, whatever you wanted to choose, I just wondered if I could ask you a question. At school, you understand like proportional representation, the first past the post.
Yeah.
And everyone, I feel, comes to accept that proportional representation is better. It's more democratic, better decision making after all. But do these elections not just wind you up? Like, how is it that I've come here? It's been like 2 weeks, really. 2 weeks in Slovenia, a week since Denmark. And we're sitting here discussing what the government's going to look like. Is it just not just a pain in the arse?
But as a voter, I mean, we saw allegations of Russian interference in America, right? But I think the issue is that first past post, it brings two-party politics, right? At the end of the day, in Slovenia, we saw a surge for Golob at the end, but we also saw people that said, right, well, Janša is meeting with these Israeli officials. And so there was an alternative on the right they could back that was ideologically close to them. So if you're a right-wing voter, I don't want foreign interference, so I'm not going to vote for them. And so I think it becomes easier to punish parties for corrupt behaviour and these kind of things. So in the context of Slovenia per se, I think it is an advantage of proportional representation. But of course, we see now there may have to be new elections because it's ended an uncertain government, much like Denmark. So
you think potentially proportional representation could be a better defence against foreign interference going forward?
I think
somewhat.
So. I think corrupt practices get very punished in proportional representation. The collapse of the Italian First Republic being a strong signifier of that. But there's no denying that on stability and stuff, as we'll see in France, that we're about to talk about now. There's very clear results in each municipal election in France. You have winner and loser, moves on with that. So yeah, tough one to really say. But in the context of corruption, I think you're better off having a proportional model.